Today we're going to talk a little bit about some signs, especially for parents or loved ones, when they are suspicious of their kiddo or family member or friend struggling with an eating disorder. So some of these are a little bit more clinical, but these are just some basic things that I have noticed as a clinician. And we can talk in the future about how to best support a kid or family member or loved one if they're showing these signs. But let's first cover some of the basics and a little bit of the why. So first we're going to talk about just behaviors, and then we'll talk about their relationship with food. So first, we tend to see that people with eating disorders start to struggle with hiding their body. So it's normal, especially in puberty, for kiddos to experiment with different styles, or especially if it's trendy to have baggy clothes, those tend to not be worrisome. But what tends to be worrisome is if someone, let's say, was bullied and then they started hiding their bodies, or they start talking about feeling or looking fat and then they start hiding their bodies, or they start showing things that feel concerning about their self-confidence and they start hiding their body. That could be like a really big red flag, especially if there's someone that didn't normally kind of care about what that looked like. Another big thing is that if they go to the bathroom right after meals, sometimes people are hiding food or purging, getting rid of food after they ate. So that's something to watch. If it tends to be a cycle that is a pattern, every day after dinner we're noticing this. Marks on the back of the hands is another one that we can see that could indicate maybe signs of bulimia. Talking about diets a lot, or nowadays with social media, I do recommend that parents just check in with their kiddos and see what sites they're following or what people they're following, because there's a lot of disordered dieting stuff out there. And when you're struggling with an eating disorder, it's almost like addictive to look up all this information or see weight loss stories. A lot of shows like The Biggest Loser or different things like that out there that promote weight loss can be really, really enticing for someone when they're struggling with an eating disorder. So looking for that. Let's see, another thing that we think or we see in our eating disorder world is that if a kiddo is body checking and you see it, so if they're asking for reassurance a lot about what their body looks like, hey, does this look okay? Or if you notice that they're in the mirrors and they're adjusting things all the time, that could be body checking. Or if they're using their hands to measure their body and you notice that, that could be a big sign. If they talk to you a lot about their friends or someone being so pretty or so confident and bring it up a lot and compare themselves, another big sign that we see. With food, there's a lot of behaviors out there, but I'll break down some of the big ones that we tend to see first and that parents tend to notice. So if someone starts changing their eating habits pretty drastically, like they used to love bread or candy or sugar, and all of a sudden they feel like they can't eat those, or they're labeling those foods as bad or wrong. If they're struggling with certain textures of foods, like let's say that they're getting in patterns of eating similar types of foods every day, and then they report a lot of sensory issues with foods, avoiding eating new things. Now, developmentally, that's normal for a lot of kids to get a little anxious about eating certain things like fish or things that feel a little bit more exotic. But what we tend to see in the sensory world is that they avoid eating meats or things that have harder textures. And it might not be a weight or body image issue. It could be a totally different eating disorder. Hiding wrappers of foods in their clothing, that too, but also under their beds or around their house. So if you're a parent and you're noticing that you're never really seeing these snacks go missing, but then they tend to go missing, you don't know where they went, and that's a pattern. That could be some secret binge eating behaviors or shame behaviors around food. Isolating when they used to be social, like a lot of society and socializing is around food, right? Going to lunch, going to dinners, different things like that. So if they start isolating and not wanting to hang out with their friends, or they're not telling you about lunchtime, hanging out with different people. So always asking them, hey, like, who are you hanging out with at lunch? What are you doing? What did you eat? If they get school lunch, right? To just kind of see if they're spending time with their friends or if they're isolating. If they are old enough to go and hang out with friends, or if you go out to eat a lot and you notice that they start eating just salads or things that our society has deemed as healthy, that could be another big sign. or making up excuses at mealtime. So if you always have family dinner, let's say, and then they said, oh, I already ate, and especially if they're an athlete, athletes tend to struggle really heavily with eating disorders in the culture there, especially places like dance or rock climbing. And so just kind of watching if any food behaviors have changed largely. So the big thing to keep in mind is, are there a lot of these behaviors are stacking together? Is it happening all the time? Do I notice that their relationship with food either feels timid, distressful, anxiety provoking, or like that they tend to be like a little bit more obsessive about it? And do you notice that they are skipping certain meals when maybe in the past they didn't? Those are just some big questions I want to provide for parents and especially loved ones when they're thinking that their child or loved one may be struggling with their relationship with food or body. In the future, I'll cover basic tips of what you could do of if your kiddo is showing these signs, to just kind of help them along the way before you maybe get them to a doctor or to a therapist, or if you want to kind of address it, if it's at a place that it's manageable. That is absolutely something that I recommend, just like kind of addressing these things as soon as that we start seeing those behaviors. Thanks for your time, and we'll see you next month.